Hey friends, it's Robert. One of my favorite holidays is on its way, and so today, to help us get ready for Easter and celebrate spring, I've pulled together a special DIY project that puts a little bit of a modern twist on an old school craft. We are going to be making miniature Easter baskets out of plastic canvas, so let's get started. Now, if you're not familiar, plastic canvas is a flexible plastic mesh used for needlepoint projects. You take a large needle and yarn, and you're able to weave designs into the plastic grid. It was incredibly popular in the 1970s, often used for making coasters or placemats or even tissue box covers. Because the plastic is more rigid than fabric, you're able to combine multiple pieces to create three-dimensional projects. What I want to show you today is how to combine a few pieces of the plastic canvas to create adorable Easter baskets that would make fantastic decorations or party favors for your Easter table. Plastic canvas comes in multiple sizes, and we're going to be using a 7-count size. We'll use one sheet measuring 10.5 inches by 13.5 inches, and then a separate 3-inch circle. The way you measure plastic canvas is by counting the number of holes you need. We're going to begin by cutting a piece that is 4 holes wide by 48 holes long. This is going to form the handle of the basket. To update the look of our plastic canvas craft, we're going to skip traditional yarn and use a natural colored jute twine. In a way, this is going to mimic the look of a wicker or a rattan basket. Measure and cut 5.5 feet of twine and thread it onto your needle. I'm using a number 16 size plastic canvas needle. We're going to leave the first row of holes on the short ends of our handle blank. We're going to use these later on to attach the handle to the basket. Starting in the second row from one short end, count 3 holes over from the left and bring your needle up through that hole from the back. Pull the twine all the way through, leaving a 1-inch tail on the back side of the canvas, and hold it in place. Then put your needle back through the canvas 1 row up and 1 hole to the right to create a diagonal stitch. Next, bring your needle back through the canvas in the second row, second hole from the left, and re-enter 2 rows up and 2 holes to the right to create your second diagonal stitch. And then bring your needle up through the canvas in the second row, first hole on the left, and re-enter 3 rows up and 3 holes to the right to create your third diagonal stitch. With each of these initial stitches, you're stitching around the tail on the back side of the canvas, hiding it from view. Continue creating these side-by-side diagonal stitches all the way down the handle until you get to the second row from the end, and then again create those 2 smaller stitches that we started with. To finish off this piece of twine, weave your needle under several stitches on the back side of the canvas, pull it taut, and then snip the twine close to the stitches. To finish off the 2 long sides of the handle, we're going to whip stitch along the edges. Cut a piece of twine that's 4.5 feet long and thread your needle. Starting in the second row from one short end, bring your needle up through the hole closest to the right edge. Pull your twine all the way through, again leaving a tail on the backside that's about 1 inch long, and hold it in place. Stitch along the right side of the canvas and come up through the next hole along the edge. Continue stitching in this manner all along the long edge. And remember, with each of these initial stitches, stitch around the tail on the back side to hide it from view. When you get to the second row from the end, stitch over to the other long edge and whip stitch along its entire length. When you're finished, again weave the needle under several stitches on the back side, pull the twine taut, and snip it close to the stitches. Next, we're going to count and cut a piece of plastic canvas for the basket walls that measures 10 holes high by 64 holes long. Also measure and cut 4.5 feet of twine and thread your needle again. We're going to stitch 3 parallel sets of diagonal stitches along the basket walls that are identical to the stitches we used along the length of the handle. Again, we're going to leave the first row of holes along the short ends of this piece blank. We'll use them later to attach the 2 sides of the basket wall. After your 2 shorter stitches to get the row started, it's sometimes helpful to remember that your stitches are 4 rows high and stitched across 4 diagonal holes. You'll begin to run out of twine when your row is a little bit more than halfway through. While you still have about 8 inches of twine left, weave your needle under several stitches on the back side, pull it taut, and snip it close to the stitches. Then thread another 4.5 foot length of twine on your needle and begin where you left off. When you finish your first line of stitches, we'll move up to create the second line or the middle row on the side of the basket wall. The only difference this time is that we're going to create the stitches in the opposite direction to create a chevron or herringbone pattern. Your stitches will still be 4 rows high, but this time they're going to share 1 row of holes with the previous line of stitches. When you get to your third and final line of stitches, remember to again change directions, continuing the herringbone pattern. Next, we're going to bend the canvas around, overlapping those 2 empty rows on the short ends. To connect the 2 ends, we're going to create a series of side-by-side straight stitches that are 3 holes across. Stitch all the way along the overlapping short sides to create a seam, leaving you with what will look like a bracelet. When you reach the end, weave your needle under several stitches on the inside of the basket wall, pull it taut, and snip it close to the stitches. Now it's time to add a bottom side to our basket using a 3-inch plastic canvas circle. Rather than take the time to stitch a design into this panel, we're going to leave it blank. Once the basket is filled with all those goodies, no one will ever see it. The plastic canvas circle can go on either side of the basket wall we've just created, and we're going to attach it using a whip stitch. It's the same stitch we used along the edges of the handle. The only difference is that this time we're stitching through both the edge of the basket wall and the edge of the plastic canvas circle. Begin stitching as we've done before, leaving a 1-inch tail on the inside and disguising it with your first few initial stitches. Once you've worked your way around the entire edge, end again by weaving your needle underneath a few stitches on the inside of the basket wall, pull it taut, and snip the twine close to the stitches. At this point, we're almost finished and we're ready to attach the basket handle to the open end of the basket wall. Place the basket in front of you and position it so the seam is facing away, and decide where you'd like to place the handles. Begin with one end of the handle, being mindful to place the empty row of stitches inside the basket, and then whip stitch it to the top row of the basket wall. And then take a couple of straight pins and pin the opposite end of the handle into place so you'll remember where it goes. Continue all the way around, securing the second end of the handle in place and stitching until the upper edge is completely covered. And then you'll probably want to stand up and stretch and pat yourself on the back for finishing all of those stitches and your first miniature Easter basket. One of the things I love about this project is that you don't have to complete it all in one sitting. You can pick it up and set it down, completing it as you'd like. The materials are also really inexpensive, and each sheet of plastic canvas is large enough to create 5 baskets along with the corresponding circles for the bottom pieces. There's a lot of room for creativity with this project. I used natural jute twine, but twine comes in so many different colors, and you absolutely should feel free to use traditional yarn if you'd like a brightly colored Easter basket. You might want to consider finishing off your basket with some ribbon, tying a bow on one end of the handle, and then it's ready to fill with paper grass and your Easter eggs. I do hope you'll give this project a try, and if you haven't done so already, I invite you to subscribe to my own channel, and be sure to check out my playlist of other spring and Easter crafts. Thank you so much for watching, and join me again next time for another great DIY.